Hurricane season is here, and forecasts are calling for an active season. How broadcast meteorologists are preparing to keep us safe from the storm, and tracking hurricanes from the ground. How Mark Sudduth plans to do it this year. This is NTWC Live.
Thank you, Alex, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to NTWC Live for, it's already middle of June. It's almost July. Hard to believe. It's the 7th of June, 7 days into the 2023 hurricane season. Last week, we were already tracking a system that fortunately was there, and poof, it was gone, just like that, which is what we expect. And we do not look at hurricane models 20 days in advance. No matter what you say, we're not going to do it. But we will talk about what's going on this hurricane season. We've got a great show for you today. Ed Piotrowski is not able to be with us. He was on our slide as being with us, but he's not able to join us today. But we do have Brad Travis, David Paul, and the one and only Mark Sudduth. So we'll get to all those guys in just a second. First, we want to thank our sponsors who make these shows a reality for us. USAA. USAA, thank you for all you do. We can't say enough about USAA. Just great things, and USAA has been part of this program since the very beginning, and we appreciate that. The South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau. South Padre Island is the host for the National Tropical Weather Conference. Make plans to join us again in April of 2024 back at the Marriott Courtyard Hotel right there on the beach on sunny South Padre Island. The Weather Company and Weather Boy, all a big part of what we do. Boy, the Weather Boy bringing in college students to the National Tropical Weather Conference and doing scholarships for college students to come and join us and learn from the best in the industry. So we appreciate everybody who's part of this. Of course, with us today, as always, is Bill Reed, the former director of the National Hurricane Center. And Bill, I know you're going to do a tropical update a little bit later on because we don't have anything to talk about, but you can do it anyway. We'll go from there. Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Tim, and everybody. Yeah, good to be on and back again. Summer is starting to encroach. This prolonged spring pattern we've had down here along the Gulf Coast has lingered quite a while, much to most of our pleasure because it keeps the heat away. But summer is inevitable, and it's that time of year where we force people to think about being prepared on these storms. I like your comment about the 20-day forecast. I won't give you my 30-day outlook based on my roadkill study on the highways in Galveston County, but today we're going to have a fairly wide-ranging set of topics. Probably who knows where we'll wander off on that. But first, I'll introduce our guest, Brad Travis, chief meteorologist for WAFF in Huntsville, Alabama, an AMS certified broadcast meteorologist. David Paul, chief meteorologist at WTVY in Dothan, Alabama. And Mark Sudduth, who is quite the entrepreneur at how to go in and remotely sense these things by deploying stuff in advance of the hurricane, and he's made some really interesting breakthroughs on how to do that in the many years that I've been following Mark. So we'll get to Mark in the second half of our program, but at the start here, we'll talk with the guys on the air there. One of the things that I'd like to hear is, I guess I'll hit Brad first. That since you're well inland from the coast there, how do you try to get the viewers into the preparedness mode for the inland impacts of these storms?
Oh, that's a good question, Bill. Because every year is a little bit different. You kind of go back to Hurricane Ivan, which is probably the last hurricane that really had a huge tornado impact here. So I think when you start mentioning the tornado aspect of it, this being a big severe weather market, it draws a lot more attention. And then I kind of throw in the freshwater flooding because, any of these systems that come in, depending on the speed, of course, could produce up to 20 inches of rain. And a lot of people don't realize how much rain that really is. Yeah,
and you got enough sloping terrain there that the kind of the 4 to 6 inch an hour rain rates of these bands are one of those slowing down. You can get some awesome flash floods out of that.
Yeah, and you go right across the state line into southern Middle Tennessee, and the terrain changes even more. You kind of go back to, I think it was a couple of years ago with Waverly. Now that wasn't a tropical system, I don't recall, but it was basically a stalled out frontal system that produced 16 inches of rain or so in just a short period of time. So you get a lot of these people. The biggest challenge, with the flooding's not as sexy as, say, the other severe weather aspects. So, and then you get people in a hurry to get to work, and it's all about the timing. It's like if it's on a weekend, you're going to have a little bit less impact. But if it's a morning when everybody's going to work or they're going home from school, say it's early fall, those kind of things, kind of watch out for that.
So I guess that what I gathered, just thinking about what you're just saying there, you basically have people for hurricane season prepare just pretty much similar to how you would prepare for your severe weather season, because all of the above kind of hazards can occur in either one.
Exactly. And the other hazards, these conferences we have, and we discuss these things, is the whole aspect of when you lose power. A lot of these people, they're in a rush to get out to cut trees down, things like that. But with a tropical system, and I go back to Hurricane Ivan, because we had some responders that were killed by falling trees because they were going out and they were trying to get things cleared as soon as possible, not understanding that this isn't like a thunderstorm. It's not just coming in and 30 minutes later it's all clear. It's a continuation of these strong wind gusts. And then on top of that, you have power outages and you have people bringing generators into their house, into their garages. So I really stress those side impacts as not just the actual weather itself.
That's good. As people have been showing us in studies recently, the indirect fatalities are surpassing in many storms the direct, and that's a good thing to get people into. So David, I would guess after Michael, you don't have much problem getting people interested in preparing for hurricanes these days.
No, I mean, Michael was such a big hit to our area, and it was really interesting with Michael. The eye wall was so devastating as it moved way inland. We had wind gusts in the county south of us over 90 miles per hour. In the county east of us, we had a wind gust in Donaldsonville of 115 miles per hour. And this was hours after landfall. So like Brad was mentioning, we have the inland flooding threat here. We have the tornado threat here. And we have that threat. If it's a strong hurricane, that eye wall makes it pretty far inland. And the effects are devastating. So yeah, definitely people here are prepared. I think it was kind of a wake-up call. Ivan in 2004 was a big storm for this area. Opal back in the mid-90s. But Michael recently kind of reminded everyone, and the people that are new to the area too, kind of gave them a little insight into the power of a hurricane. So yeah, the last few years here, it's been really easy to get people to prep from an actual prepping standpoint, from supplies to getting their houses ready as well for the impacts. And the city crews too. What I've noticed a lot in recent years is they've done a good job in trimming the trees around power lines, just on an annual basis to make sure they can kind of limit the potential for power outages as well.
Yeah, that's good. I see a lot of places that don't do that. And one of the challenges over here in the flooding vein is keeping the drainage system cleared out of brush. It's a never-ending task, and it grows fast in the growing season. So after Harvey, I've seen a lot more people doing that, because that was identified as part of the problem of the flooding of houses away from even the creeks, just the drainage system.
Yeah. And Brad was mentioning too, and you've seen it there in the Houston area, Bill, the amount of rain that can fall with even a tropical storm is is mind blowing. I mean, you get 20, 30 plus inches of rain over a couple of days span, and places that have never flooded before will flood with an event like that. And I think that's really from a messaging standpoint, the hard thing to convey to people, because everyone wants to put weather history in the frame of their lifetime. Like, I've never seen it. I've lived here for 40 years. Well, you've really never seen the possibilities that are available. So the inland flooding threat is it's so important to try to stress that to people. If you live anywhere remotely low, you've got to be aware that flooding could be a problem with the next storm that comes in.
Yeah, I find it. We have so much flooding over here. The issue really is all the new people moving in. There's I think since Harvey, there's been probably 400,000 new residents in Southeast Texas. And since Ike, over 1.5 million. And you don't know whether they have hurricane experience or not, but I would take the assumption if I was a emergency manager is they don't. And you can never go past the basics. You have to do that every year. Or you're going to lose people on, especially the subtleties that too many people think, oh, it's just a tropical storm. Well, there's no such thing. And in fact, every one of I've experienced or been a forecaster for 5 40-inch or greater tropical rain events. And the only one that was caused by a hurricane was Harvey, and all that rain fell after it had gone down the tropical storm strength. It's just a function of how slow they're moving and trying to convince people of that part of the problem. I want to shift gears a little bit here. One of the things that Tim and Alex and I would like to start looking at now that we've got 10 years or so of doing this under our belt is see what works and doesn't work. And you guys are a perfect sounding board for some of it because you've been involved with us through most of this time frame. So Brad, what, in your way of looking at it for the conference down on South Padre, what are some of the best aspects that you take away from what we provide?
I think the presenters, some of the best aspects of it. I really like the introduction of the student session that you guys started this year, which broadens the horizon, so to speak, of some of the younger generation coming in. I love the fact that we can do a live broadcast from there. I think my station appreciates that. That it's not because I'll go to several conferences, and this is one of 2 of the conferences I go to that you do live shots. So that way I'm still working. They can see I'm still working. Of course, I enjoy the location as well, but I think everybody gets a little bit out of it. I like the fact that we get the first forecast from Dr. Klotzbach from Colorado State. And I overall, I think you guys are doing a bang-up job.
Yeah, awesome. Can you think of any areas that we might need to strengthen or add to the mix that we've got?
I think maybe you could do more of a severe weather aspect on some of the rain bands that come in. Why some of these tropical systems will produce a lot more of these EF2, EF3 type tornadoes, whereas some of them will only do like a quick EF0, EF1. I think that would be a real aspect for people that are farther inland like me. I think that may draw a little bit more attention to that.
Okay. I think I can find some people to study that would love to come to South Padre.
There you go.
David, your thoughts on what works best for you when you come to our conference?
I echo everything Brad said, and of course the hospitality room, Tim. I mean, that's
Jenga.
Let's be honest, Jenga's got to be right up there because that social aspect I think is so enjoyable to be able to see friends in the industry, to connect once a year, and it goes beyond just the friendships, but it's an opportunity for us to talk about what we do in different markets around the country, from Texas all the way up the Eastern Seaboard. So it's something that we're not doing that another market is doing. We can learn from them and implement some of those different ideas into our home markets as we go through the hurricane season. That really is cool, the sharing of information between others in the industry. Of course, learning from the different presenters is huge as well. Location is great. The live shots, great. The opportunity to record interviews and send that or take that home with you or have it, sent to you via the internet to put towards a hurricane special or just sound bites to use during the hurricane season. The aspect of collecting that information is good from a value standpoint if you think about what the station is sending us to do and what they're getting in return. So that's fantastic. I mean, you all have done a really good job with the conference for sure.
That's good to hear because I've always thought the same thing. I hate to be the one that gets hit with a storm because sometimes that's when you first learn what you need to do. And that's why I try to bring those folks in the next year to our conference because while it's fresh in their mind, those of you that haven't had an impact maybe can learn that and not have to go through the same struggles they went through because there's always things that don't work when when a storm comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the process is learning too. I mean, it's hard when you learn it yourself, when you have to go through the event and then you realize what didn't work. It is a little bit easier if you can, you hate to say it, but Brad went through something and he saw the struggles. Now I can learn from his struggles without having to go through those struggles myself.
I want to piggyback on that. One thing I really learned this year was I didn't know these manhole covers floated during these the surges. I was like, wow, I can imagine these people walking around in floodwater and falling into a manhole.
Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. Mark, I'm going to bring you into the conversation here. You've been attending, I think you were at our first one and have been at most of them over the years. What do you got to add to our critiquing?
I like the fact that it's in South Padre. Nothing against Orlando or Vegas, but it kind of, I don't want to say traps us there, but I like that because we're at that small hotel. It's not a giant resort with 50 other conferences going on, and the intimacy of it, that we can all talk with each other as colleagues, and people can get to know some of these sort of superstars of, like the Hurricane Center forecasters, like one-on-one. There's this very interesting camaraderie that has come out of that, and networking starts to develop because of that. And I like the variety of the different speakers it's great for me to be able to present. I certainly appreciate that. It's always an honor to do so, but I like to watch and learn from people that we might not have otherwise heard from. There was one year where, and even people from that region down there was somebody that was an expert about sea turtles and how they deal with strandings after hurricanes. There was a time when Josh Warman and Karen Kosiba, or however you say her last name, the severe weather, the Doppler on Wheels team, they were there talking about, that's a little different. That's not your typical lineup. And I really like that part of it. It's, of course, the conference is geared towards broadcast meteorologists, and with the sort of social media and TV, not what it used to be. A lot of people unplugging their cable, and we're watching on demand now. There's more of a need to keep that cohesiveness there. Look, this is on YouTube, this is on Twitter. And so broadcast is different. And I think that the conference has evolved around that. You and Alex and what you've done with the multimedia side of it is incredible. So it's just improved as far as I've been concerned. Love it.
Yeah, it's a fast changing profession. So it's like one of the things I try to do is find somebody doing cutting edge research that might have an application that we will all be using down the road, and presenting it to you so you guys can start following up on it. That's important.
Agreed.
On that note, Bill, I think it'd be cool if you could find someone, I'm not sure who that person is, but maybe a critique or an overview of model performance from the previous year. Which computer model did the best, which models struggled, which models, was it good with the track and not with the intensity. But maybe someone who's really honed into the model performance would be interesting to see how they perform with the various tropical systems that we see.
Okay, I can. They actually do verification of that at the Hurricane Center. So the verification person, I'll contact him and see if he's the right person to do for that, or he'll give me maybe somebody at up at EMC that focuses on the tropical aspect. Though they may be just looking at their models. The Hurricane Center is unique in that they're in that regard is that they're using all these models, so they are to some extent critiquing them. Maybe not under the hood what's causing that or whatnot, but that would be a good subject. Okay.
I think, guys, probably the most exciting part of the conference is the Jenga competition in the hospitality suite. Watching those guys do that, and David and Brad, I know you mentioned the social aspect of it, and the Saturday morning fishing trip goes a long way, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. I'm still working on that fishing YouTube video.
Yeah, the fishing there, if you don't know, is really, really good. Laguna Madre, and Brad and I have gone out several times, and speckled trout to redfish. The water is pretty smooth most of the time, real easy to get, different areas and buzz around. And it's just that time of year too is such a great time of year to be on the water. So that's always one of the highlights of the trip too. And that's what's cool about this trip is you have a little time where you can find some things to do on your own.
Yeah. Now you got me distracted. Do you guys wade fish or do you go on get a boat when you're down there?
We have done both. We've done both. Wade fishing was quite an experience. The guide just jump out of the boat and away we went, and we limited out real quick.
Yeah, that's been my experiences. That's probably the most fun way to do that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Of course, you got to watch out for stingray.
Yeah, or if you land a stray bull shark or something. Now,
yeah, exactly. It's all part of the adventure,
right?
You don't think about that.
You lost me
on the fishing.
I'm out. Stay out of the food chain.
Well, we when I was stationed in Kingsville, the search and rescue helicopter pilots, that part of their training would fly over the northern end of the Laguna there in Baffin Bay. They'd find where the fish, it's cheating. They'd see where the fish are, and as soon as they were done with the day, hooked the boat up to the truck and down they went right to the spot. But they also had lots of pictures.
Well, we need to add that next year.
Yeah, right.
Oh yeah, helicopter.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, we get Mark to go up with the drone again and do that.
There we go.
Go out over the bay with the drone. That was, Mark, that was cool. I was over at the Hilton a few years ago when you had your drone there.
Early years,
kind of in the early days of drone,
right.
And you had that drone up shooting stuff. And I think
did a selfie out from the balcony of the hospitality room.
And I think that was cool because that was kind of new technology then,
right?
And you were showing off what you had. And I think that was, again, another cool aspect of the conference is you get the opportunity to do that kind of stuff.
Agreed. And we went to SpaceX year before last. One of the most incredible things. I mean, that was amazing. And it wasn't, like a Kennedy Space Center tour. Don't want to knock it, but like it was, the engineer comes walking out. He's like, what's up, everybody? He's not Bob, the tour guide, and that's what he does. He's like working on Starship or whatever, and he comes over. He had like a plaid shirt, you remember, and he had jeans, and he's just got the rough look. He's not. It just wasn't. It was that was amazing, and then in the bus ride in and out again, you're talking to each other, and you're still kind of working, but you're also learning about other stuff, and that's the economy down there with SpaceX and the port. That to me was fascinating, and my degree in geography, understanding about all that kind of stuff, it really hit home. And you just don't do that typically at another conference. And there's nothing against those other conferences. It says they're in a big city. It's Monday through Thursday or whatever, and then everybody goes home, and that's the end of it. This is a lot different. It's always been that way. And I didn't do it when it was in the Bahamas, but now that you've brought it to the South Padre, and I look forward to being there next year. And then, of course, as soon as it's over, we got a lickety split to San Antonio and get ready for the eclipse.
Oh, that's right.
The next week, absolutely. Yeah, and I think too, and Mark, you bring up a good point, guys. That going back to the first conference when we were at the Isla Grande on the south end of the island, I think we had 30 speakers and 20 listeners. But there were always 50 people there because the speakers stay and listen to the other speakers. Right. And that still continues today. The 125 people in the room, 30 of which are speakers, but they stay to listen to the other speakers. And you sit at the table with the listeners, if you will, and it really gives you an opportunity throughout the conference to really mingle like you're talking about.
Yes.
Of course, what Tim isn't saying there is that he's got some of his staff out there with huge wooden bars they're putting over the exit doors so that you have to stay there.
That would be illegal.
That's true. And not to mention that we have our own craft beer made just for the conference, but that's a whole different thing.
It is. Actually, listening to some of this talk, another idea popped in my mind. I see a lot of drone video after a tornado. I see this as it's so overwhelming to assess the damage after a hurricane because it is covers such a large area by comparison. Maybe I can find a speaker whose business is going in and assessing via drone the damage aspects. Think that'd be something of interest to everybody?
I'll tell you
Oh,
exactly.
yeah.
Brandon Clement. Brandon Clement. I can get you in touch with him from Twitter, etc. His is some of the most incredible. He works with LSM, Live Storms Media. Brett Adair works with them too. Brandon Clement is one of the best drone guys out there.
Okay.
You know, I think that's a much needed thing. The challenge is, you have roughly 3 or 4 stations in a market, but a lot of these TV stations are really reluctant to get out and shoot drone video. And a lot of it's due to the fact they don't have the manpower to get out there and shoot it right after. And it's the same with flooding. I'm always saying, the best video you're going to get of flooding is from a drone. Since everybody used to have a helicopter, and they just, from then on, they just start cutting costs, and they just keep cutting costs, and it's really hard. So I think if somebody could develop some kind of network that they'd come to your town the next day and do that, that'd be great.
So, Harvey, not to toot my horn, but that's 6 years ago now, right? That I remember I had like the DJI 2, and I put it up several times. I was at the hotel there at near Katy on the very far end of the Addicks Dam, and the water was coming up, and it was all flooding back there off of Maids Creek and whatnot. And I put the drone up a few times, and I mean, it was remarkable to be able to see that, and just how much that has changed, photojournalism. That would be a great addition to the agenda next year. And somebody other than me, Brandon Clement, would be great. So second that.
Send me the contact info.
I'll do it, Bill.
We'll see what we can do.
Yep.
Great.
I'd like to see that video too, Mark, just because that's where my daughter lived, and I rescued her from the floodwaters right at the base of the dam there. So I'd like to see that sometime.
Yeah. I'll send it your way.
I got a couple of still shots where, remember, you parked in my driveway, Mark, one time doing an interview. You would have flooded your vehicle out if Harvey. It didn't quite get in the house, but if people that had cars in the street got their cars ruined by it in there, not anywhere near a creek. It's pretty amazing. Real quickly, any thoughts from you guys on how we're doing and what direction we're going with the weekly online version? Totally different process, of course, than a conference. Brad, you got any thoughts?
I got to say, I see it in my news feed occasionally, but a lot of times I'm just busy working, and I don't actually log on and watch it. To be honest, there, I don't watch it frequently.
Okay.
I'd be the same with Brad. I know it's there. I don't always check it out. I think as the season gets a little bit deeper and we start seeing some more, storms forming and some more impacts, for me personally, that's when I get a little more honed in, I guess, than like the average Joe who's just, things. And as the season kind of matures, that's when my focus kind of sharpens.
Okay.
Tim, Bill, we got a couple of comments coming in just from online. I'll share those, and we can, you and I can probably address them as well as anybody. I'm asking if the student conference can be held at the Marriott as opposed to across the street. There's some logistical issues there. It's possible, but as the student conference grows, the Marriott probably won't have room for it. This year it was small, but we hope in the years to come it will grow quite large. And the convention center, which is right across the street, does have the space for that. And along with that, there's questions, can we stream that? And I think perhaps it could be. That's something we'll look at in the future years. The student conference this year was held the day before the rest of the conference. And we're looking at the logistics of that, whether it be the day before or the day after. But the great thing about it is some of our best speakers were able to speak to the high school students, and that's really cool. That really makes a difference. So, but we'll definitely look at the ability to stream that as well. And also there's a request to stream the stream or record the award ceremony. We don't typically do that, but it's not a bad idea. So that's something we can look at as well. So good suggestions. We appreciate that. And also, Mark Casper says that these National Tropical Weather Conference presentations are directly responsible for him being a supporter of your hurricane track project. He said, who knows how long it would have been had it not been for this, for him to support you. And I hope that you're seeing that regularly.
Yes. I mean, that's going back to the power of social media and the reach of this, and, being able to get out of the box of a conference room. And then we do this, and it was a great thing to kind of come out of the pandemic. This was, part of that. We had to, and look at where it's gone since. And we can reach a lot more people over time. And then these are archived. They're sitting around forever, for people to go back and watch. And it's a good thing. There's it's always good to put in that effort. That's a big mantra of what I do, that even for a little tropical storm, yes, I'm going to go to it because it's always worth the effort. And this effort is meaningful to people. Even if it's just a small group of people, it does matter.
Well, we appreciate that. And there's, and a lot of people do the download on the podcast as well, listen to it after the fact. And that's all important. And you reach who you reach. And as long as you're reaching people in hurricane preparedness season, I think that's really important. So we appreciate you guys being such a big part of it from the very beginning. Bill, let's do the sponsor break and thank all the sponsors who are part of this. Then we'll kind of move on to the second half of the program. I want David and Brad to stick around, listen to Mark, and ask questions of Mark as well. This is your opportunity to chime in and be part of our panel. I want to thank USAA. You know what? We started doing things for students. Alex and I have been doing things for students and kids for a long time, and USAA has been part of that. They've jumped in and helped with that. And when we transitioned over to the National Tropical Weather Conference, they came with us and said, yes, we want to be part of that as well. They saw the importance of it and really been part of it from the beginning. And they always provide people for interviews during the conference if you need to talk to somebody in the insurance industry. So we appreciate that more than you know. So thanks to USAA. South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, they too really enjoy being part of the program. Of course, the mayor or city manager always comes to do the welcome on the first morning and tell us a little bit about South Padre Island. And they encourage the live shots on the beach. They like that as they would, and they should, because the beach is so pretty. And thanks to South Padre Island, the Convention and Visitors Bureau, for being supporters of the National Tropical Weather Conference all along. We appreciate that. The Weather Company, many years they come, they set up their Max computers and do everything they can do so we can see what's new in the Max world for the television broadcasters. We appreciate them for all they do. And Weatherboy really adding a new dimension with the college student scholarship, basically. The last couple of years, we've Weatherboy, courtesy of Weatherboy, we've been able to provide basically full ride scholarships to come to this conference for 3 meteorology students anywhere in the continental U.S. or Hawaii to come to the conference. All expenses paid, airfare, hotel, meals, everything covered by Weatherboy. We appreciate what Weatherboy does, and Michael and everybody over there for making that a possibility. So thanks to our sponsors, a big part of what we do. All right, Bill, you've got a big tropical update for us. Then we'll get on to the second half of the program. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, doing it. You guys know we don't have a lot going on. I do this mostly to remind myself that this is part of what we do, and we do these weekly shows once things get active, and it gets the rust off of what I talk about. So we'll get over here. Share, you don't want to really care about that. So to start with, it's just a broad view of the Atlantic. The springtime westerlies, the southern branch of the westerly jet, is active across the Gulf of Mexico and producing different kinds of weather systems than tropical, but they, like last weekend, things can happen over the warm water and the weakening flow. They're strong over the Western Caribbean, and it's actually, as a side note, they've been having almost all-time record heat in the Northeast Caribbean islands and in parts of Central America, with a subsiding air on the south side of that jet. NHC has been carrying a 10% or less thing of probability of this upper level low becoming subtropical. I think it's at 0 right now. So basically the next 7 days look quiet. The easterly waves that are chunking off Africa are well south of 10 degrees north and pose no threat of development at this time. And the Eastern Pacific has been quiet so far, and there's nothing to look at there. About the only stuff going on globally is 2 cyclones, one in the northern Indian Ocean, and the other one in the open waters of the Pacific. At least in the next 5 days, neither pose a threat to land, but Certainly the one in the North Indian Ocean will bear watching because it's a lot of populated areas, and the Indian coast where the longer range models seem to think it might go. So that pretty much does it for the tropics for now. So back to the subject at hand. So Mark, it's your turn to pester you with some questions there. We didn't have you at the conference this year. You were preoccupied with your other parts of your job. So what's been happening with your work, and anything new in the works to look forward to this season?
I had to miss this year. It was actually family vacation time. The 2 weeks lined up perfectly that I couldn't pass it up. And we went on a cruise and did a little research down there looking at some hurricane stuff. So I don't think the IRS though is going to let me write off a Royal Caribbean cruise because I talked to a few people about hurricanes. But you got to balance the family and the work stuff, especially that I've gotten busier. My partnership with Fox Weather has allowed me to do more. The Patreon support, the crowdfunding allowed me to do more. I went to California in January to cover those atmospheric river events. First time ever, and no indictment against California, but somebody tried to steal one of those boxes off of a bridge that we had. It was a homeless woman tried to take the box. It was looking at the Pajaro River, and it was getting ready to go over the banks, and it did a few weeks later. Fox Weather's Max Gordon covered that extensively. But before it went over, this homeless woman tried to steal it, and it's chained up and everything. Of course, she couldn't figure it out. And, I felt bad for her. Look, these are humans. And even though she's trying to steal it, she's needing something for money, clearly. And it was just kind of this weird, like, I'm in California, look at what's going on here. I went up to the Sierras and documented the big time snow they had. And that's how I started the year. And then, I've been up to Massachusetts to cover like the only big nor'easter they had. And that was in March. Everything's just been really strange. Even last hurricane season, going back to Ian, we had basically nothing. And then it was Super Bowl time. You know what I mean? It was very odd. And that carried over. And then some severe weather that I've gone out to the plains for. And the big part of that is, we always try to test. You're talking about getting the rust off. Yes, I am a weather nerd. I love seeing active weather. It's very interesting. Don't know why. I don't know where it came from, but it's just part of me. But I like to test stuff and just keep practicing during these other events. New technology. Our camera boxes are smaller than ever now, literally the size of a lunchbox, even smaller than that one behind me. And they run for 80 hours, and we've had that the last few years, but to be able to get them small enough that I can airline 5 or 6 of them, or we can build 20 of them and put them out, and, they're tiny now. We've got to test them. I can test them in my backyard or in my office here all day long, but it's more fun to go out in the field. And so that's what we've been doing. And most recently, a couple of weeks ago when I was out in the plains, Clovis, New Mexico, by the way, was the hot spot recently. I don't know if you saw that on Twitter. Clovis was trending because there were so many storm chasers in Clovis over and over again on this last round that we had, that when we went to dinner one night, the locals were literally asking us, we had our hurricane track shirts, and they were like, why are all these storm chasers in Clovis? And we were like, it's just the pattern. And they were like a little concerned.
Where else are you going to stay when you want to do the high plains of eastern New Mexico? We'll be going through there in 2 weeks. I'm a member of the high pressure chase team.
There you go. That's perfect. They'll appreciate that. And then we were over at a town called Melrose on the way over to. We were trying to get west, and a whole bunch of chasers had stopped at an Allsups, and including a lot of the NSSL people. I mean, it looked like they were filming a movie, and they are. They're filming Twisters or Twister 2, whatever it's called out there somewhere. But they had the different Doppler trucks and all these scientists and tour groups and individual chasers. And the lady inside, this one lady inside was just, she thought that, like, should I be like getting autographs from people or should I be worried? I said, no, you don't need to be worried unless nobody leaves. If nobody leaves, then you need to be worried. And everybody left within about 10 minutes. They all scattered because initiation had taken place. But we were out there also to test, going back to last year when we went to SpaceX. We got our hands on Starlink and went out to test it. That was a big reason why I wanted to go out there. And I ordered it through our crowdfunding partnership with all these different people from around the world. Less than $700 for the unit, and SpaceX sends this gray box, and it says Starlink on it, and I shipped it to Weatherford, to one of our friends there, and purposely waited until we were in Clovis with a supercell in front of us to try it out, because I wanted to see how easy it was, because that's what I had been reading. And I'm not kidding you, within 15 minutes, we had 95 megabits down and 15 up. That thing opened up, found the satellites, and we were on. It has a little Wi-Fi deal you set up, and we just plugged it into this little power supply that a friend of ours donated to us for the trip. Unbelievable. Like, this is going to be so huge, especially for monsoon season. What little of it there may or may not be this year, we'll see. Other weather coverage, like big high plains blizzards where there's just nothing out there. And then in the aftermath of a hurricane, it could be very helpful. Not only for us, but maybe we can, have somebody that needs to call somebody. They can do so over Starlink using Wi-Fi calling or FaceTime. It could actually help people. But I'm a believer. I was a little skeptical. I read the reviews, and our viewers were like, we have issues, and some were like, it's perfect. It was kind of split. But the 2 times that CJ and I tested it, it worked great. And that's going to be a real help. It's stationary. We didn't get the one that you put on your vehicle and drive around with it, because that's more involved and more expensive. And I'm going to go back out on Friday for a few days. It looks like an uptick in severe weather again. And, just do some coverage for Fox and our group as we await the hurricane season. So I'm going to take a break and just stop talking for a second. Then we'll talk about what I'm going to be doing for this season. So we do have some new things we're going to try.
Yeah, that Starlink. See, where do you set it? Where do you set it up so that you can use it?
So it has like a very long cable. I think it's 75 feet to the dish, if you will, and it's very small, relatively speaking. So we just set it up. It's got this little stand right next to the truck. In our case, we had a Tacoma that we rented. And you got to have it out in the open, and that's easy to do out in the plains. And you power it on, and within a few minutes, it starts finding it, just moves all by itself. And you can put it. We did in the back of the truck too. It's just got to have a clear view of the sky. And
so you can take it with you. It just doesn't work while you're driving. Okay.
Right. So ours is called the roaming plan.
Okay.
Because you can have residential. Say, hey, I want Starlink to be my internet. And not AT&T or Spectrum or whomever. And so you would have that set up, and you have a cell or whatever, and you actually have higher priority bandwidth if you're residential. Roaming and the InMotion are deprioritized, but even deprioritized, I'll take 95 megs down and 15 up and not be a priority. That's fine with me. But yes, Bill, that's right. You can just set it up wherever you go, because I'm on the roaming plan. Some of the chasers do have the InMotion version. Now, this one will work in motion. You're not going to drive down the highway at 50, 70 miles an hour with this dish thing in the back. That's not going to be too good. But we drove about 20 miles per hour down this country road, and it stayed connected. Like if we ever wanted to parallel a slow-moving supercell, it could probably be done. But it's not ideal, and it's mainly meant to set up, get some data, upload something, and then move to the next thing that we have to do if we're ever without LTE. And like I said, we would use it in the aftermath of a hurricane. But usually you can just drive an hour and get out of what we call the blast zone and find some kind of technology that's still up. But if not, we'll have Starlink.
You guys appreciate, I know Brad and David, you guys would too, that like when we did the SpaceX launch, the Super Heavy when it launched, you're trying to use your other live units, and there's so many people there on the cell phone streaming, that you lose your signal and you can't do it. And all of our live units were unavailable, but we had a Starlink, and everything was done through Starlink, and we were using Starlink, and we had one at the conference as well. But yeah, the Starlink made it so we could have a signal when nobody else did, and we could be live all the way through with no problem. So it provided the internet connection. I think it's an important piece, and Mark, you're seeing that, and I think we're seeing it too. So it's good for broadcasters as well.
And it's just getting started, really. If you think about it, we're still at the beginning. Eventually, it's going to become affordable and better and faster, and it's going to open up some possibilities to areas that need it for education. And what Elon has done, controversy notwithstanding, donating the stuff to Ukraine. It's been needed over there, and helping with scientists in remote parts of the world. The day has come. I've dreamed of being able to have affordable satellite, and it's easy to ship that thing. I can airline it in a little Husky thing from Home Depot. I almost called it HD. Anyway, and easy to airline it. No big deal.
That's going to be great for rural areas. Our place in New Mexico was you can get through the phone company a bit of a dial-up, but it's totally useless if you want any kind of data feeds on there. And I could
look into it, Bill. Maybe the guys down there, this guy over here, he can get you a discount maybe through, right? Come on, Tim, go over to SpaceX and just ask them. It's worth it's $150 a month and you can pause it. Hey, I don't want to pay $150 for the next 3 months. Nothing's happening or whatever. Just turn it off.
Elon says you're going to make it happen. Hang on.
Right.
There we go. So what's new for hurricane season?
So we've done pretty well with the remote cams. I think that speaks for itself. Always going to have challenges, and the hurricanes are going to make things challenging. And we've learned that too. But the wind data, that's lacking, and we get good pressure data, and so does other people like Josh Morgerman does great pressure data, and he does those presentations even when he goes international. And pressure is a lot easier. We can use a little drop sensor or from Kestrel or a higher end barometer, whatever the case may be. And Bill, this, and anybody in the weather business knows that wind data is difficult because it must be accurate. You have to site the equipment properly, and you don't want just spot readings. You want a good digital log, if you can, of the entire event. And I've been working on it since the very beginning of my career, even when I had vehicle-mounted anemometers. We don't do that anymore because we have all this remote equipment. Ian was a big wake-up call that we had a couple of weather stations mounted on bridges, and I want to try to do a screen share, if I may, real quick. Just want to show you what that looks like. And let's see, we'll share the whole screen. Yes, that will work fine. Thank you. So here's a video. This is the Midpoint Bridge. Just mute that audio. That's the Caloosahatchee back there. That's what the weather station looked like on the bridge there. And we were really excited, thinking, oh, wow, we're going to really record some tremendous wind data. We were trying to stream it live off the computer that's in their little Raspberry Pi in 1 second increments, and then have 1 minute average and your peak gust for that minute. And it failed for a lot of reasons. Just too much happening. Our server got overloaded. And I was like, all right, this is going to be my next thing to really, really focus on. The camera systems got that I think as good as we were going to get it until, they're literally this big and those run for 80 hours. So we could put 100 of them out there. I think there's a Tom Hanks movie called Circle or something where he had these little cameras you could put everywhere. Anyway, until that happens, really solid wind data. And so we've been working on that. We're going to go back to doing 1 minute instead of the real time because it's just easier on our server. And that's what the Hurricane Center stuff's being reported. The advisories is, 1 minute average and the peak gust for that minute. And then we have these, all the data will be stored on the Raspberry Pi for later analysis. And we've done well with that in the past, but I just want to put more emphasis on wind data. And we have 4 of those weather stations. And by the way, I want to keep bragging about it. They're all donated by our crowdfunding partners. And, that's huge. And so we have 4 of them. And we've got these little devices that the DOT uses to put signs on Jersey walls. That was that orange thing. And we just retrofitted. There was a gentleman in Florida that welded the mast on for us. And so we can sight them. I mean, come on, there's no better sighting than a bridge, typically. Wide open. It's definitely higher than 10 meters in most cases.
Probably gets you out of most of the flying debris since
right.
it's water.
Right. Yeah, and terrific exposure. But we just got to get the data side, the collection side to work properly. And then the transmission, people want to see it. We developed an interface where you can watch it in real time, so it'll update every minute. And like I said, we've been doing it since 2004, but I want to perfect it. There's a difference between doing something and getting it perfect, or at least close to perfect as we can. So a lot of emphasis has been placed on that in this off season. And in fact, on July 1st, my programmer / best friend since childhood, the gentleman up in Raleigh, he's going to come down and we're going to continue to work on it in my garage. And the idea would be to put 4 weather stations out and at least get 1 or 2 of them in that right front quadrant, if not the core. But some areas are really difficult. You think about Michael, University of Florida had their wind towers out there, and they had one in the right front quadrant down at I think it's like a memorial park or something like that in Mexico Beach. And it did pretty good. I think it got 120 something mile per hour peak gust. Dr. Forrest Masters would be able to tell us, but he's not here, but hey, I'm sure he knows. But then he had another one on the western side of Mexico Beach, where the eye went over and the wind blew it over, because we came across it that night trying to get back to Mexico Beach. So even the well-funded universities, they'll tell you this stuff is hard. And I got a good friend, an engineer here in Wilmington. They were working with some people last year, and the propeller blades get messed up, and it is harder than people think to capture reliable wind data. And I want to try to change that. I don't think I'll be known as the guy that changed it forever, but I want to at least put more effort into it.
I think mapping that data on that note, Mark, would be so eye-opening for people to see. Because I think from a broadcast standpoint, it's hard to tell people how much more powerful an eye wall is compared to the fringes of a hurricane. Everyone thinks they've gone through multiple hurricanes, right, and they have, but unless you go through that eye wall, you really don't understand the power of that eye wall of a hurricane. So if you were able to get that high resolution data and map it where people can see, wow, 2 miles away, the wind was 40 miles per hour greater than where I was. I think that'd be just incredible data to really open up people's eyes.
Agreed. And we have that on our interactive map on our site, on our insider site. It's our crowdfunded. I wish everything could be free. We know we talk about this, but it can't, or it would crash. And that's how we fund what we do. So I hate that word paywall, but on our insider site, our member site, we've developed this map. This gentleman in the UK built it for us, coded it up. And that's exactly what it has. You'll see, the 2 icons, and you can just click on them, and you actually see the video too from the camera that's looking at the weather station. And we thought we had it for Ian. I was so excited. I was in Orlando, and it was just failing. It was like the whole website was getting dragged down because there's stuff happening, these processes on the computer and in the server, and it was just like, oh my God. So I literally had to remote into the Raspberry Pis and shut them off. You know how painful that was? It's because the whole site could have gone down. So you live and learn. And not at all comparing myself to Mr. Musk, but look, he publicly blew up a giant rocket to test. And I'm not joking. I mean, you have to fail sometimes. Whoever said failure is not an option, they don't do weather. Because failure is absolutely an option, and it's the best way to learn. If you don't fail, you never move forward. You don't want to be inept. and a clown out there, and we don't do that. But yeah, sometimes we lose, and it helps you.
Hey, Mark, I'm just kind of thinking off the cuff here. Have you ever thought of maybe partnering with an airline or something and strapping one of these on to an airplane? And that would be the ultimate test on everything. You could see where the failure point is, or, I mean, I don't know. It's just kind of a wild thought I just had.
Or even, I mean, getting out at a private airfield. We know enough people on social media, just get behind a plane that could do, and I know there's the wind tunnels, and those are hard to schedule. There's a lot of science that goes on. You have to schedule them, and there's grants and people that access way before we would. Because you're right, Brad. It's like, testing it on a regular day. Okay, it's 15 miles per hour, and the average minute was 12, and whoop-de-doo.
Right.
What about 130, 150? And it's hard. We'll have to maybe drive to Raleigh and put one in the back of my Tacoma. And I think the speed limit is 70. I know a couple people in State Highway Patrol. Maybe they can give me about a 2-mile area where I can put that Tacoma to 120.
Yeah, you go to Montana.
That's it. That's there you go. Road trip to Montana. Speed limits. There's some unlimited areas out there, basically.
It would be from an engineering standpoint too, Mark. I'll think of your video from Mexico Beach, and when the roof of Toucans lifted off. At what wind gust speed was this, where that roof, went up? I mean, that'd be interesting from a.
But Mexico Beach is an interesting case study. I think back to that. Where would we have put something? You'd have to bring a tower out like what University of Florida did, Dr. Masters, and we don't have those. We abandoned that idea because it was too cumbersome. I mean, they have a crew and it's a truck, and like, my goodness. And there's just going to be areas like Mexico Beach where there's just nowhere to really put anything. So I've often wondered, man, could we ever do anything with the video using photogrammetry? And I've talked to my engineering friend, Dr. Ryan Maris here in UNC Wilmington. And I thought it was real simple. Just look at the video and come up with an algorithm that piece of debris is moving X miles per hour. It's like, no, it's not that simple. You have to have targeting things and multiple cameras. And I'm like, come on. Like, imagine if we could look at video and get speeds out of video using photogrammetry. All the tornado chasers that have captured high velocity debris, maybe that's something somebody can come up with, and it is as simple as a 2D shot from a high-res digital camera in 4K. I don't know. There's got to be people brilliant enough that could figure that out, and we could just do away with anemometers, just do everything with video, even raindrops, like basically a video version of the step frequency microwave radiometer. Seriously. Maybe that's 20 years down the road. I don't know. Because anemometers tend to get beat up. It's so frustrating.
Yep. Yeah, well, to get rigor, you have to sometimes sacrifice precision and accuracy.
Right. But I want it. I want the precision and the accuracy, and
I guess.
It's elusive.
Yeah, you have to. I think a compromise in there would work better for what you're looking at, and using other remote sensing to maybe find finer details like via radar or the.
Sure. Well, one day I'm going to work with Dr. Maris on his idea of how we could use multiple cameras and some kind of visual targets, because he's brilliant, just this engineer, like wow. I mean, and teach me what he's thinking. He's working a lot on wave models and stuff at UNC Wilmington. So he's very busy with that. But I think photogrammetry could play a role, especially as we get to 4K and higher resolution. And especially, too, this is part of the reason I like to go out to the plains, using video in tornadoes to understand wind speeds at the ground level, and some of the drone video, too, that like Brandon captures, and this gentleman, Brian Mfinger. Some of that's in 4K, and you might be able to do something with it. I find it difficult to believe that we can't do something with video to start extracting wind data or velocity data out of it when we look at debris. Because, David, as you talked about that video from Mexico Beach, there's so much in it where debris is going by and the wind speed is right there. We just don't know how to extract it.
Yeah,
Frustrating.
That's got me curious. I'll ping on Tim Marshall, see what he knows about.
Yeah, he's not doing anything. Between his trips to Antarctica or whatever, and Tornado Alley every day.
I rubbed it in on him for months that he paid good money to do what I got paid to do, was spend a lot of time in Iceland.
Right. No kidding. Yeah, Tim would be a good resource. Sure, there's got to be something there.
I can't believe we've hit the 11 o'clock hour. I was.
That's good.
Cranked up there. Any final thoughts from Brad or David before we turn it back to Tim and Alex to wrap it up?
I think going back to the conference, I think you guys are doing great from where it was, towards the beginning. I think my first year was year 2, I think, or year 3 of the conference. And you guys have done a phenomenal job. And this outreach to the internet during the time between the conferences is good as well. So keep on keeping on.
Agreed.
Yeah. Again, great conference. Keep it up. I just want to interject, you actually do something for the wives, and I appreciate that. And I'm sure the wives, I can only imagine what those conversations are like. They haven't been shared with me, but I think it's going to be an interesting season. I think we're going to probably see a real distinct change from the overall Atlantic to the Gulf of Mexico. Now, based on what we were talking about, you go back, and I think a lot of people think it's El Nino and we're going to have fewer hurricanes, but I think it was, Bill, I think you had the graphic that was talking about the Gulf is actually active sometimes during these El Nino, and one that really kind of struck out to me was the Hurricane Camille back in 1969.
Yeah, the Eastern Gulf and the origin of those storms, they really didn't get going till they got out of the Caribbean. And my guess is they got out from under the worst of the shear is what was happening. And if I had more energy, I'd go back and dig up the reanalysis maps of it, but it's something else. And one last thing for Mark, you were wondering what gives you that spark that makes you want to go out and stare at the weather. And my father referred to that in watching me do that as the defective gene.
Right. I guess.
On that note, we all have that. So on that note, I'll turn it over to Tim to wrap us up.
Gentlemen, thank you. Great program today. Bill, thank you very much. Brad, David, Mark, good program. Time really did go fast today, and we appreciate that. Thanks for all of your insight in all of this, and we look forward to seeing you guys again in person in April, if not before, somewhere down the line. Next week, another great program. Warren Fadley is going to be with us next week, along with Jim Cantori. The first question for Jim Cantori is going to be, what's it like to make a 50-foot putt across the lobby of the Marriott Courtyard Hotel into our putting device in the hospitality suite? We have pictures just to prove that he did that. Right. So both those guys we're going to be on next week, and we really look forward to that program as well. I want to thank our sponsors once again, USAA, the South Padre Island Convention and Visitors Bureau, the Weather Company, and Weather Boy, all part of what we do here at the National Tropical Weather Conference and NTWC Live. That's it for this week. We'll see you with Warren and Jim next week. Until then, take care. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of NTWC Live Hurricane Center Podcast. If you did, head over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a 5-star review. And join us next week. This is NTWC Live.